something that was very prominent at the time of the Prophet was poetry. That was a form of entertainment that the people used at that time. And if you look at what the entertainment talked about, primarily women, war, and wine. So all things that Islam in general either prohibits or respects or has a lot of structure around and respect for. So they're not things that we would normally talk about. And as Imam Mahdi had mentioned, the hip hop that we have today in our society is very similar in that it's really degrading women, it's promoting like values that are corrupt, and it's becoming very accepted. In youth, you see like 9, 10-year-old children who are singing these songs with such passion and vigor, and they don't even know what they're saying, but they're singing it because it's the cool thing to do and they like the beat to the music. And only as they grow older do they learn, and then these things that they've been saying are no longer things that affect their heart in any negative way because it's something that they've been surrounded by and has been embedded in them throughout their entire development years. So this is what's going on in society now, and it was happening at the time of the Prophet. And his solution wasn't, okay, we're going to prohibit poetry. Excuse me. Poetry is no more. That wasn't the solution. The solution was, we're going to continue to use poetry as a means of entertainment, but we're going to do it in a way where we purify poetry. And so we use poetry to talk about Islamic values and to reach people through the poetry. And therefore, poetry became something that was actually used a lot by the practicing Muslims and continued to be used for entertainment. And so that's an example. And that analogy can translate over now to us in music, which comes up a lot. And how do we purify music that exists now? How can we use music to reach the youth of today? And the reason I mention that is because the first thing that we need to do in order to have Islam conveyed properly in this country is to use a language that people understand. So in the language that we use, we can't, like Arabic words, I love them, I use them often because they just come off my tongue. But if we're going to speak in a language that's universal, number one, not all Muslims are Arab. And in fact, in America and in the world, most Muslims are not Arab. And the other fact is that Islam is not a culture. There's no culture of Islam. There are Muslims in Indonesia, and they practice Islam through the Indonesian culture. There are Muslims in the Middle East who practice Islam through a Middle Eastern culture, which is even more detailed. There are Muslims in South Asia who practice Islam through a South Asian culture. There are Muslims in Africa, et cetera, et cetera. So you see where I'm going with this. Islam is not a culture. Islam is practiced through cultures, and Islam is a set of ideologies that we follow. And therefore, there's going to be, and we're developing now, a culture for Islam here in America, for the West. And that culture can't be one where we want to hold on really tight to the cultures from other countries and bring them here as they were, because that's just not going to work. This country has its own culture as it is, and we need to work within that culture and at the same time not lose our identity and not do it at the expense of our Islam. And that's the challenge that we're facing, but it's not one that we can't overcome because there's a solution to it. And the first point that I want to make to that solution is using a language that's understood. In our speeches, in the way that we talk, in everything that we're doing, we need to use a language that's understood. And that doesn't mean just English. That's one thing, yes, English is the first step. But besides using just English, we have to also see what it is that people are using to receive a message. So for the youth, that's entertainment. Like hands down, that's what's raising our youth. That's what's influencing our youth. That's what's guiding them. That's what's giving them their moral values. If entertainment says it, that's what it is, whether it be TV, whether it be movies, whether it be music. If you guys walk on a college campus these days, you can't really get someone's attention from far away because everybody's walking around with headphones in their ears and their iPod in their pocket. And that's pretty much what the youth are doing these days. Everyone's plugged in, and they're listening to something. And what is that? If it's not purified and if it's not something that has a positive message, it's going to be something that affects society as a whole. And the reality of the situation is that 95% of the Muslim youth in America do not regularly attend any masjid or any Muslim organization. That's the reality. And as Dr. Damaj was saying, most of the Muslims in America are in public schools. They're not in these insular Muslim communities. They're not. They're out there. And unless we fix society, what's influencing them is what's out there, which currently is not positive, which currently is not good. And so even if we're just focused on our own self-interest, which is exactly what I've been saying we shouldn't be doing since I got here, it's still to our benefit to fix society around us. And so I'm going to come back to the music piece because, as Fidet said, I am a Mass Youth worker, and currently Mass Youth has a large, and very powerful and hopefully highly impacting program or tour that's coming up. Have people in the audience heard of the Voices for Change tour? 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe. Okay, so I'll introduce the tour. So there's a very popular hip-hop R&B band from Europe called Outlandish. They're mainstream over there, and they have 3 albums out. They topped the charts several times. And in 2005, they themselves had a transition in their approach to music. Their lead singer, who happens to be Muslim, and there's another member of the band who's Muslim, and then a third who's Christian. And their lead singer went to Hajj and had a personal change, a personal epiphany during that trip, and decided that he needed to change the way that their music reaches people. And so, although their music had some strong message in it before, it wasn't always said with the best of etiquette or delivered in the most positive way. And so with their most recent album, they've done just that. They've delivered a powerful message in a very positive way. And so we brought them here, or we're bringing them here, inshallah, God willing, as an example of the change that we would like to see in music and in entertainment here in America, and as an example to the people who will attend their tour. And so they're coming on the tour called Voices for Change, and the reason we called it Voices for Change, and the tagline is, "It's time for a new tone," is because that's just it. We're Voices for Change, and we're all saying change, and we're all saying that it's time for a new tone. It's time for the entertainment in this country to change and to be entertainment that's worth listening to and that's delivering a message that's actually shaping our youth to be positive, engaged, and righteous citizens in this country.